I don't know if many of the children here have ever existed without tank shell holes in their walls, and the towers of an occupying army surveying them constantly from the near horizons. I think, although I'm not entirely sure, that even the smallest of these children understand that life is not like this everywhere. It was afternoon in Charlotte, about noon actually, and I received a phone call, and my son-in-law, Kelly, was on the phone, and he asked if Craig was there. And something about the way he asked made me realize, I felt right away that something was wrong. And then I asked, why, Kelly? And he hesitated for a minute, and he said, we've had some very sad news. And then my daughter, Sarah, I could hear her in the background, and she got on the telephone, and she said, Mom, it's Rachel. And I think the first words out of my mouth then were, is she dead?
We were opposing the demolition of farmland and other property, Palestinian property by Israeli destruction forces and bulldozers. And the bulldozer drove up, and it kept going, and she tried to move back, but she couldn't move back, and she got caught underneath. She got caught underneath the bulldozer. Many other internationals began to surround the bulldozer and yell at it and tell it that there is somebody there, and it did not stop.
Where Rachel was killed, she was protecting a doctor's home. And that's important to realize. And the three children, his wife, she knew that family, and that doctor felt that Rachel was like a daughter to him. He bought that house. It was in the middle of the neighborhood. There were other rows of houses between his house and the border. Those other homes, those other streets were all destroyed, and now it was his turn. And I've had people say, well, she was in a war zone, and Cindy points out that war zone is people's neighborhoods. Those are children.
I'm here for other children. I'm here because I care. I'm here because children everywhere are suffering, and because 40,000 people die each day from hunger. I'm here because those people are mostly children. We have got to understand that the poor are all around us, and we're ignoring them. We have got to understand that these deaths are preventable. We have got to understand that people in third world countries think and care and smile and cry just like us. We have got to understand that they are us, we are them. My dream is to stop hunger by the year 2000. My dream is to give the poor a chance. My dream is to save the 40,000 people who die each day. My dream can and will come true if we all look into the future and see the light that shines there.
As Israel completed its withdrawal from Gaza, the following day it issued orders to confiscate additional Palestinian land from the West Bank and continue the construction of a separation wall. This wall is twice the height of the Berlin Wall and 4 times longer. It rips through villages, severing travel for work, healthcare, and education, separating farmers from their lands and families from loved ones. An Israeli study revealed that the barriers route was chosen in order to confiscate land intended for illegal settlement expansion, not for security reasons.
Here you have this huge wall being constructed right in the middle of the West Bank. How can anybody believe that there's going to be the creation of a real state? It's a symbol and a reality of oppression.
Anybody outside of Israel who supports a two-state solution has to be very careful, because what they mean in two-state solution is that 90% of historical Palestine would be Israel. In the rest 10%, you'll have two huge prison camps, one in the Gaza Strip and one in the West Bank. The people who fought in the war were also the people who wrote the history books of the war. And they already had a story that they made up about what had really happened. And that story was integrated in the Israeli educational system. It was integrated in the media and the political discourse.
Some of us who work as Jewish educators have been admitting over the last maybe 10 years that it is propaganda.
Israelis don't understand what's going on. They don't know the occupation.
We began to educate ourselves. And the first thing we did was invite women, Palestinian women, to come into our homes and talk to us and tell us what exactly was the problem as they saw it. And little by little, we learned about their lives. We learned about the suffering they encountered on a daily basis. We learned about the killing going on there, about the lives that were completely circumscribed by an occupation that they had no control over.
I'm one of the few Israelis not in uniform and not a settler that's been in the territories in the last 9 months. You see that the army was actually waging a very cruel war.
On the Israeli side, there seems to be no understanding that this is how you create terrorism. If you are so repressive on a people, you give them the sense of having no options, and that's a very dangerous place.
In fact, there's a very clear correlation between the kind of human rights abuses that Israel commits in the West Bank and Gaza and the Palestinian militant response to those abuses.
Most Israelis have very clear views. This is a very political country. And when you talk to somebody, you can argue all night. And you can go red in the face or blue in the face or whatever the color, you won't get anywhere. But when somebody says, I refuse to do this, this is wrong for me, for us, for our country, this is immoral, and I'll go to prison rather than do it. And one guy does it, 5 guys, and 50 and 100, and people say, hey, what's going on here? These aren't cowards, these aren't traitors. Most of them are officers, by the way. So if these guys are refusing, there must be something wrong here.
Nobody can argue with what I've seen. I mean, they may not like how I say it, or they may not like all the facts that I convey. It may sound like I'm imbalanced, but the fact is, when you're dealing with oppression, there is no balance.
Even someone with a 20% open mind would reach the same conclusions that our commission reached. You could be pro-Israeli, and still, if you saw these realities, you'd have to have a completely closed mind not to come to the same conclusions that we reached.
So the violence begins with the occupation. The opposition is resistance to the occupation. Resistance to violence is legitimate in any country in the world. I may disagree with some of the acts of resistance. I think some of the tactics are stupid.
Attacks on Israeli civilians are stupid, immoral, and counterproductive. They should be stopped.
We should not use violence whatsoever, because it really destroys our intentions, and it destroys our position, which is in the higher moral standing. We are the victims, and the world should not understand that we are the victims.
Criticizing the Israeli government policy for assassinating people or for shooting children and maiming them, for thousands of children, that's not anti-Semitic, that's humane.
We have to tell the truth about what's going on and say as clearly as we can, if you keep going down this path, you're going to destroy yourselves. No enemy will have to destroy you. You're rotting from within because of the methods you're using against innocent people.
I don't think, even with the best video that you can make, Americans will really understand what it is like to be a Palestinian under occupation. I guarantee you, if you spend 1 week in Gaza or in the West Bank, you will understand it in a very profound way.
All the wars of independence, you can start if you want with the war of independence of the United States. They said no taxation without representation. And we demand taxation from the Palestinians and don't give them any representation. It's the same all over the world, and nobody wants to be under somebody's occupation.
As an Israeli, we go to India and to South America to meet the Native American Indians. We're looking for these indigenous people with some kind of more rooted wisdom, and they're right here. They're right here, right under our noses. Nobody ever comes here. The Falahin, for me, the Palestinian Falahin, it's like, everything that that people go looking for. People with deep roots, really connected to the earth, with this romance with their land, and just incredibly wise and open-hearted, and simple, beautiful, and Israelis never see them unless it's through Target. I wish that people knew what was really going on here, and I wish that people could see these people through my eyes. That's what often I'm looking at people and they're so incredibly beautiful, and I'm just thinking, I wish that Israelis could for 1 minute see them through my eyes.
No amount of reading, attendance at conferences, documentary viewing, and word of mouth could have prepared me for the reality of the situation here. You just can't imagine it unless you see it. This is not at all what I asked for when I came into this world. This is not at all what the people here asked for when they came into this world. This is not the world you and Dad wanted me to come into when you decided to have me. This has to stop. I think it is a good idea for us all to drop everything and devote our lives to making this stop.
The real battle for justice in the Middle East has to be fought and won here in America.
This is an American issue because this is an issue of American foreign policy.
The Israelis are talking about this, and I think it's time for Americans to realize they're the only ones not talking about it. And it's actually very dangerous for their own interest and for the interest of Israeli Jews here.
Well, we're not going to be tossed in jail. We're not going to be tortured. We're not facing what people in the occupied territories are facing. If we decide we don't want to do it, fine. But then try to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a murderer.
It's really high time for Americans to step up to the plate, to do whatever we can, encourage our government to take a strong initiative to end the occupation.
Those who really care about the interests of Israel should exert all the pressure possible in order to force Israel to stop the aggression, stop the repression, end the occupation.
And the just solution has to be ending the occupation. Ending the occupation is step number one.
Justice is the best way of bringing about security and peace.
There'll be no security for Israel as long as this kind of oppression continues.